Good afternoon, everyone. It is September 17th, 2018. I'm Eric. How you doing? So, videos like this could probably get me doxxed and harassed, but I don't fucking care. I'm not going to hide my face. Can't get blood from a turnip, right? So, diversity and affirmative action are crutches for incompetence, and I 100% agree with that. So, back in the 60s, there seemed to be a good argument for affirmative action legislation. Even though slavery had been abolished for almost 100 years, there was still a lot of resentment. And in particular the southern states, for the price they had to pay for daring to succeed from the north, and of course blacks were an easy target for that anger and frustration. A couple of old guys from the Civil War were still alive back in the 1960s. The point is, the Civil War wasn't as long ago as some imagine. 100 years really isn't that long, but we're talking now. Well, if it's 100 years in the 1960s, then, well, 120 by 1980s, 140 by 2000s. So it's been a while. It's still not as long as you would think. In comparison to our lifespan, it is, but in the overall space and time, it's not shit. Okay, so affirmative action was a recognition of recognition, damn it, that for the most part, blacks did not have equality of opportunity in housing, secondary education, or in the economy. It sounded like a good idea at the time. We'd give blacks preferential treatment for a while so that people would get used to seeing them in roles that were uncommon at the time. And of course, with familiarity comes acceptance. That is so true. Once we become familiar with an idea and it's pounded into us, like democratic socialism, for example, and that's the whole point of their trying to pound it into us, because we've become familiar and then we accept. All people are instinctively afraid of things they are unaccustomed to, so it makes sense that if we mix the race more on every level, a familiarity would develop between the races, but it didn't work. And before long, theoretically, they would be more or less equal. And they are. I mean, look, I was flipping through the radio station the other day, and I counted no less than 13 radio stations that were oriented for a black audience. I struggled to find an oldie station, so well, let me see. Yeah. However, right from the start, Johnson's plan to have those, and I'm quoting Johnson, I'm not saying this, okay? However, right from the start, Johnson's plan to have those niggers voting Democrat for the next 200 years. He said that, and that just goes to show you. Black folks have been voting for Democrats, believing all this time that the Democrats were sympathetic to their plight. And they've had a plight. I'm not going to deny that. But over the last, I don't know, since the 60s, things have gotten steadily, as far as equal treatment goes, steadily better for black folks. It's pretty fucked up that one of the presidents would say something like that, but does it really surprise you? I mean, look at the things Abraham Lincoln said. There's an old saying about giving an inch and taking a mile, and programs meant to appease and aid black people seem to enrage them. Some of the rhetoric went from give us a fair shake to kill the white man. We're taking over. And there has not really been any positive results for affirmative action. And it is a crutch for incompetence. Now, when I was in college, the whites, the Asians, hell, yeah, just the whites and the Asians. Our work had to be meticulous. No fuck-ups in grammar. You know, you had to use the MLA style citations, all that shit. And Mexicans and black people, they were not held to that same standard. So, and we have a crisis that, you know, these, a lot of these people are leaving high school barely able to fucking read. Barely able to do any kind of reasonably complicated math. And look, I'll be honest with you, I'm a fucking dropout. I dropped out in 8th grade. And I still went to college. Whatever real benefits that was derived from affirmative action programs pretty much died 10 years later. In some respects, it did create familiarity, but whether that familiarity was good or bad depended a lot on location and the percentage of blacks in a community. The higher the percentage of blacks, the less likely that this familiarity was a good thing. Today, affirmative action, what's left of it, and social engineering based on diversity have become an issue of national security. Let's be honest, there are blacks holding jobs because of this type of social engineering that shouldn't be holding these jobs because, quite frankly, they are incompetent at them. This becomes a problem when the jobs are in areas of education, firefighting, police, and a host of other jobs that are vital to the nation's security. What appears to have occurred is that qualified people are being turned away from jobs they would thrive at and replaced by people who aren't very good at the job. It's hurting the nation's brain trust, which is why it has become an issue of national security. Now, I don't agree with everything this author says. I'm not a national security freak. I am not a safety freak. I like danger. Life would be really boring if everything was safe. It may sound racist. The truth must be told to address the issue. There is a mental deficiency between whites and blacks. To be fair, the exact deficiency exists between white and Hispanics, and just the opposite between whites and Asians. There is a 30-point gap between the IQ, between the average white and the average black, and that is no small difference. IQ test studies by race have been repeated across the globe, and the results have been consistent. Even when the tests were administered in South African universities, the results, and these were in universities, okay? Universities. The results remain consistent with the average IQ score at around 70. You don't have to be Einstein to know that 70 is a very low IQ score, and though it is fair to say that many blacks have much higher IQs than 70, just as many blacks have IQs much less or much lower than 70. Now, I study group or crowd psychology, and one of the things that the father of the school of thought, I guess, said that an institution that benefits one race of people could be detrimental to another race of people, and this is the case in American schools. Some people have to learn at a slower pace so they can absorb at least some of it, but instead they have a one-size-fits-all school system, and it's causing a lot of problems, and it's creating a lot of stupidity. This bit of information is problematic on many different levels, but at the same time, it is also revealing. It is problematic because when it comes to intelligence, there absolutely is scientific proof a group of group superiority based on race. You can almost hear Adolf Hitler laughing from the grave. However, it is also quite insightful and may be the explanation of why blacks and Hispanics are much more inclined towards violence to solve their problems, as America's violent criminal population in correctional facilities suggest. Now, I'm not going to deny I talk a lot about violence, and I do advocate for violence. However, not all problems can be solved with your fist, just tyranny or guns. So, how do you deal with the science? And there is science, okay? It's not like global warming. And people who, clinical psychologists and so on, who talk about this stuff are always they are shunned by the scientific community. So any scientist who comes out with a truth like this is going to lose a significant amount of wealth. So First of all, for the sake of America's brain and economic trust, affirmative action as we know it must end. We must also recognize that as a group, both blacks and Hispanics have large percentages of their population that can barely function, and we can't just ignore these people. What we can do is stop admitting immigrant blacks and Hispanics over whites and Asians as the first group takes away from our nation's brain and economic trust, while the second group adds to it. Frankly, America needs more whites and Asians, and our current policies towards immigration are self-destructive. If in fact whites do become the minority in America, we will be faced with all of the same problems Africa and South American countries face, and we are already seeing the seeds of that tree of disaster with this pro-communist movement that has engulfed the Democratic Party. But we also have to deal with the blacks and Hispanics who are citizens. And our laws and all that should apply to those individuals the same as they do us. Of course, no black or Hispanic who is capable should be denied any opportunity to make the most of their ability, whether that is in education or the workplace. But what about those who are at an intelligence disadvantage? These people need to be educated at a much slower pace so they can absorb at least some of the material, as I just said. And manufacturing in the United States was once how black folks and low-skill individuals made a decent living, and that is all but disappeared through the various trade treaties and the fact that corporations love to use fucking slave labor. To end it here, we have a little clip. This is Terrence Nance and Damon Young on random acts of flyness and intentional acts of blackness and the beauty of lotion. We're only going to see about less than a minute, I think.
Yeah, I made a lot. I was in Pittsburgh, and I hoop, so, you don't want to call your point guard a nigger because you're not getting the ball. Yeah. My dad had these stories about white people that had called them niggers, and then he fought them and beat their ass. And so I wanted a story like that for myself. Like, you know what? I need to be called that so then I can have this nigger fight story about the time this white boy called me one and I kicked his ass just to prove, I guess, how black I was. And even
You see, a lot of these guys are looking for any excuse to attack white people, and Mexicans are included there. I would also say Arabs too. I hate to be that brutally honest, but it's the truth, and supposedly the truth shall set you free, but killing the state is what will actually set you free.